Hello there. It's very kind of you to join me. I'm going to go back into the Constitution today, the Constitution of the United States of America. We're going to dig into that a little bit. How's that sound? Now, I have this old cigar here, which is allegedly Cuban, 10, 15 years old. So we're going to smoke that while we do this. Well, it feels Cuban. Cuban cigars often have a very tight draw due to the style of roll that's popular in Cuba. And it has a really, really tight draw. This to me is almost the equivalent of like a street taco, the way it was rolled. It's like not even straight. Hmm. Flavor's quite nice. I actually really like that. It was hard as a rock when it was given to me, and I've sort of resuscitated it in my humidor over a period of maybe 4 months, I guess. It's been sitting in there. Hmm. Pretty nice. So we left off in the introduction. I only got to page 8. So we're going to do this again and we'll see how far we get. Introduction Part 2, the Articles of Confederation. Just as it took time for Americans to break with Britain, it took time for them to see themselves, in Hamilton's words in the Federalist, number 85, a nation without a national government, and take steps to remedy that defect. In the process, they had to prepare the political ground for governmental reform and to devise mechanisms and institutions that they wanted to assemble as a new national constitution. Beginning in 1776, Americans launched a series of experiments in state constitution making. The fruits of those experiments guided later efforts in devising and amending constitutions, including in 1787, framing the Constitution. Mm. Draws very tight, but the flavor is very good. But in 1776, few Americans felt that they needed a national government. For one thing, they recalled the failure of the British Empire. For another, they were devoted to a body of principles called republicanism. Americans wanted republican government, which meant no king and no nobility. The people, the ultimate source of legitimate power, would exercise it through their elected representatives. But conventional wisdom taught that a republic could only work with a small population in a small territory. Each of the 13 states was as big as a republic could be to survive external and internal threats to its existence. Thus, it seemed unlikely that one government over all 13 states could survive and preserve liberty. In 1776 of July, when Congress opted Lee's resolution for independence, adopted Lee's resolution for independence, they also adopted his two other resolutions. The first authorized negotiations with such European powers as France and Spain. The second called for Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union. On November 15th, 1777, after a year of argument, Congress sent the Articles of Confederation to the states. The Articles created a one house Confederation Congress, with each state having one vote. Most issues required a majority, and such matters as treaties needed 2/3 vote. All 13 states had to ratify any proposed amendment. The, con- the Confederation had no independent executive or judiciary, no power to raise revenue, and no power to operate directly on the individuals. Quite different than the British Empire they were leaving behind. Draw as much tighter, you got to fight to get that out. How could the Confederation be financed? Because the Confederation Congress had no taxing power, it had to ask the states for money, with each state's share based on the value of its lands. The states were to collect taxes and send the proceeds to the Confederation. Americans distrusted a strong central government, especially one with taxing power. They were fighting a revolution against one such government and were leery of trusting another. Also, Congress, caught up in the revolution's fervor, believed that faith in the cause would spur the states to do what they were asked to do. It took nearly 4 years for all 13 states to ratify the Articles. 4 years. Under the Articles, the United States established relations with the Netherlands, France, Morocco, Prussia, and Spain, borrowed money abroad to help finance the war, and fielded a continental army that won the war. Its diplomats won the peace, negotiating the Treaty of Paris, under which Britain recognized American independence and gave the United States territory between the Allegheny Mountains and the Mississippi River. Allegheny? Anyway. The Confederation's greatest domestic achievement had to do with those western lands. Some states claimed these lands based on colonial charters, but their claims overlapped. Hmm. Other states, which had no land claims, resented that landed states had a chance to make windfall profits by selling land to settlers and investors. Oh my, how the times have changed, huh? Now you'd kill to be on the water. The landless states refused to ratify the Articles of Confederation until the landed states transferred their claims to the United States so that the nation could reap this windfall. Hmm. The next problem was governing these lands under territorial ordinances that Congress adopted in 1784, 1785, and 1787. These lands were organized as territories to be admitted to the Union as new states on an equal basis with the original 13, with rules for organizing local government and for public education. Slavery would not be allowed north of the Ohio River, the Northwest Territory. Thus, Congress abandoned the old model of colonialism, a mother country governing territories as colonies only in its own interests. Hmm. Despite these successes, the Articles had fundamental weaknesses that threatened the Union. Also, state economic and political problems, which the Confederation could not resolve, threatened the American experiments in government. The Treaty of Paris pledged Americans to honor debts owed to British or Loyalist creditors, but the states ignored these promises. Angered, Britain refused to withdraw from the Western territories. Also, Britain, France, and Spain limited trade with the new nation, which could not retaliate or force the lifting of these limitations. Third, Spain controlled the lower Mississippi, strangling American settlements unless American settlers swore allegiance to Spain. And again, the United States was powerless to resist. Hmm. The Confederation had repeated difficulties with the states. They rarely paid what they owed. the Confederation in full or on time. The states rarely paid the Confederation. The states rarely paid what they owed the Confederation in full or on time, and some never paid at all. They also ignored treaties with Indian nations. Many states failed to send delegates to Congress, often leaving Congress unable to function. The Confederation could not force the states to meet their obligations, and it could not amend the Articles to give Congress more power. States disputed boundaries, arguing over fishing rights, waged trade wars against one another, and imposed tariffs on goods across all state lines, all to bolster their own economies at their neighbors' expense. Also, settlers in frontier regions of New York, Virginia, Massachusetts, and North Carolina tried to found independent states, and Congress could not help to resolve these disputes. Hmm. Most alarming, turmoil between debtors and creditors convulsed many states. A problem worsened in the economic downturn of the mid 1780s. Hardest hit were farmers who lived from harvest to harvest and could be ruined by one bad year. In Rhode Island, battles between debtor and creditor parties led to rapidly changing state laws, such as paper money laws that helped debtors but hobbled interstate commerce and seemed to nervous creditors and attack the rights of private property. It's quite the dilemma they're facing. Where debtors could not win relief through politics, they rebelled against what they saw as heartless creditors and an indifferent judicial system. The most famous debtors' rebellion was Shays' Rebellion, which began in western Massachusetts. Outbreaks of debtor violence spread beyond that state from Vermont to Virginia. By some estimates, one fourth of the armed men of New England took part in Shays' Rebellion. Daniel Shays, a former captain of the Continental Army, was more of a symbol was more a symbol of revolt than an actual leader of the rebellion. He was a debt-ridden farmer who struggled to keep a roof over his family's head. In 1878, in 18 I'm sorry, in 1787, Massachusetts authorities, with the help of the Continental Army, put down Shays' Rebellion, but his lessons lingered. Fascinating. Chaos. Loosely united city states by a central power with no power. A bit of a paradox. And perhaps this is one of the reasons why it's best to think of the founding fathers as more like engineers building something, and they basically applied the scientific method to statescraft. And they tried and tried and tried and iterated when one style didn't work and another needed to be tried, and they would try it too. And in this way, over time, they started to make changes and adjustments to the parts of their plan that seemed like perhaps it was weak. That bit about the states waging tariff wars and trade wars against one another is kind of interesting given the context of today and everything that's going on right now. I guess I wasn't aware that they were doing tariff wars all the way back then between the states. It's actually a pretty nice cigar, even though it's like 10, 15 years old and it was dry as a bone. It's been revived pretty well. It does smell and taste a little different than ones that I've had in the past. Well, city states and loose unions have a couple interesting problems. One of the interesting problems of city states is what I call the response to the warlord problem or the warlord problem itself. This is a famous example cited by um, those making an argument to libertarians, for example. And the argument goes, what will you do if a powerful warlord comes? How will you get your people to unite? At some sense, the warlord problem is an extension of the actual structure of a city state. Come here, buddy. My cat's going crazy. He's trying to see what's going on outside. He must have found a possum or a raccoon or something to bother. Come here, baby. Briar. Come on. Anyway, he's not going to come, so just got to let him go, I guess. So basically, one of my favorite examples to bring up when talking about the warlord problem um, is to steelman this case of the warlord problem, which is um, the Greek city states. Um, the Greek city states coming together to defeat Persia. Persia was obviously a powerful warlord, and it was the most powerful empire on earth at the time. So why would a couple Greek city states be able to defeat them? That would have been very unexpected. And yet they did. They came together as one group and they defeated them. Now, this is the comical thing about the warlord problem. There's a bit of a tangent, not necessarily related to the Constitution, but as long as I'm on the concept, we might as well go there. The funny thing about the warlord problem is the same city states, not long after this, were conquered by Greek barbarians in the north, the Macedonians. And the reason they were conquered by them and not by Persia is hilarious. So when Persia was coming, they all said, "Oh my God, it's the end of the world." Everyone prepared. They all got together. They made it happen. When the Macedonians were coming, they said, "Deal with it yourself." So all of the city states were conquered one by one. They didn't even think it was a big enough deal to have to come together and protect against it, so they were wiped out. It's pretty interesting. I'm not sure if that's exactly relevant to the conversation about the American city states underneath a Confederate republic, but anyway, it felt somehow relevant. Um, all right, well, I think that's good for tonight. I'm gonna stop there and end the video, but appreciate you for coming and hanging out. I'm enjoying this little Cuban stick, and I had a good time reading, and I'll catch you on the next one. So that was the introduction part two. Thanks so much. Well, have a great night. Bye bye.